Welcome everybody to the next adventure in the UK virtual study tour on Marshall Mondays. Today we're going to the University of Manchester, and this is what happens when the University of Manchester is very clever and brands you when you come and visit. So here is my University of Manchester t-shirt. Anyway, we're really excited to have University of Manchester here today to talk to us about their amazing university, and rather than listening to me, I'm going to hand you over to Daniel, who will start the presentation. Oh, by the way, we are recording today, just so you know, and we'll be putting this up later in the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome everybody. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay. Okay, can you see the screen, everybody? Wonderful. Okay, I do apologise. I'm not wearing the Manchester t-shirt. I feel really silly now. Mary has totally upstaged me. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm temporarily with my parents in the south of England during the lockdown, so I didn't think to bring a t-shirt with me. Anyway, enough about me. I'm Daniel Anuto. I've met some of you before. I'm the international officer responsible for postgraduate recruitment at the university. I'll be joined by my colleagues, Professor Tate and Dr. McCorkindale from the Humanitarianism and Conflict Response Institute. And then later on, we will hear from two of our students. Anna, who's already on the call, is a current student just finishing up, and Adam will be joining us shortly, and he graduated a couple of years back. So just a very quick history of the university. A number of world firsts took place at Manchester. For example, Ernest Rutherford split the atom for the first time. Professor Arthur Lewis was the first black professor at the university. He received the Nobel Prize in Economics. The world's first ever stored program computer was built at the university. The name Pankhurst may ring a bell with you. Christabel Pankhurst, the first woman to graduate from the University in Law. She was one of the famous Pankhurst sisters who were instrumental in the suffragette movement in the UK. We then had the largest steerable radio telescope in the world, and finally, Professors Gaiman and Voslov isolated graphene for the first time. Their work at the university currently in the National Graphene Institute. We count 25 Nobel laureates amongst current and former staff and students, and the two gentlemen I mentioned just now, they are currently working at the university. So just a quick whiz over rankings. I know they're, some people in the US like to talk about rankings, some don't. Here in the UK, we love to talk about rankings, so I can't not mention them. As you can see there from the numbers, they speak for themselves. Manchester is a very strong school. We sit in the top 30 in the world, and we currently rank number 6 in the UK. You'll see that a large proportion of our research activity is judged to be world leading or internationally excellent. I do apologise, the phone's ringing. Hopefully that will stop. Okay, I'm sorry. Technology, 1 minute, I'm sorry. Okay, that stopped. I do apologise. This is the joys of working from home. Manchester's educated 8 current prime ministers and presidents, making us one of the top UK universities for educating world leaders. And finally, we're a founding member of the Russell Group, the well-known grouping of research-intensive universities in the UK, so some of the strongest schools in the UK. Okay. Just a shot there of the campus. This is one of my favourite parts of the campus. You can see that Manchester is a unique combination of old and new buildings, some beautiful Gothic Victorian architecture there. On a lovely summer's day, you'll see our students. We actually have lawn chairs out on the grass generally, and you'll see students either studying, having lunch there. So even though it's a very urban campus, there is plenty of green space around as well. Another shot there, that will show you the proximity of the university to the city centre. So the buildings at the bottom of the screen there, the beautiful Gothic buildings there. And then right at the top of the image, you can see downtown. So you can literally walk from the centre of the campus downtown in about 10 minutes. Manchester is the largest single-site university in the UK, and we have just over 40,000 students. Around 10,000 of those are international, as in non-European students. We also have a significant population of European students. So technically, you'll see about 1 in every 3 students on campus comes from outside of the UK. It is a very, very diverse campus. We have around 300 to 400 Americans every year. That number there does include study abroad exchange all the way through up to Masters and PhD. And then there are around 160 nationalities represented on campus, so students from literally every corner of the world. I won't go into too much detail, just in case anyone is interested. There is the rough tuition fee per year for master's programs. Converted those into US dollars for you, but they will obviously vary with exchange rate fluctuation. Just to point out that in addition to, of course, Marshall and Fulbright scholarships, we do offer a number of other postgraduate scholarships. One is a central scholarship that I look after that students can apply for from every background, and every academic program, and then we do have a number of scholarships that are offered by the individual academic departments as well. Being the largest UK university, we also have a huge number of different programs. We have some areas of real excellence. I won't really touch on those too much now, as this is a very quick whiz through. Just to say, it's probably easier to tell you what we don't offer rather than what we do. We have pretty much everything from A through to Z. We don't offer fine art, journalism, or kinesiology, but we have pretty much everything else in between. The University of Manchester is consistently voted the most targeted university by the largest number of top employers. This survey here, the High Flyers report, is produced annually, and in the last 10 years, the University of Manchester has come #1 7 times. The 3 times that we weren't #1, we were still within the top 3. So for at least 10 years, we have a very sustained history of generating highly desirable graduates. Okay. So we have hundreds of different societies, sports clubs, all those kinds of things. As the picture suggests there, we do have a lacrosse team, and also please feel free to laugh with me. We do have an American football team. I can't attest to how good they are, but we do definitely have an American football team as well as lacrosse. The Manchester Aquatic Centre is an Olympic-sized pool that's right on campus, and as I said, hundreds of student societies as well. The university guarantees accommodation to all international students for the full duration of their studies. So if a student were to come and do a 1-year master's and then love it so much they want to stay on and do a PhD, we would have room for them in dorms for the full 4 years that they live with us. Accommodation information is available on that website. And then just very quickly at the bottom, there is a non-profit lettings agency run by the universities in the Manchester area that look after off-campus housing as well. And I can provide all these links later by email. A famous Manchester musician once said, Manchester's got everything except a beach, and I'm inclined to agree with him. Plenty of canals instead, and the coast is only about an hour away. Just to point out there, Canal Street, that is the centre of the LGBTQ community in Manchester. Manchester has one of the biggest centres of LGBTQ culture in the UK. And this is just a quick overview of all the facilities that are available in the city. So theatres, soccer clubs, shopping, all those kinds of things. The Manchester metro area has a population of around 2.8 million, so it's the largest metro area outside of London. There are over 40 languages spoken in Manchester. Manchester, I believe, is one of the most linguistically diverse places in the UK. And then that figure of 100,000 students comes from the number of different universities within the city itself. For those of you who aren't familiar, Manchester is located right in the middle of the UK. In my mind, that's one of the best things about it. You've only got London 2 hours away if you want to go and visit. The cost of living is much cheaper in the north of England than it would be in the south. Very accessible to other areas such as the Peak District, the Lake District, and we benefit from having the biggest airport outside of the London area, just over 20 minutes away. Okay, so there's my email address there. Again, this will be circulated later by email. I would also recommend taking a look at the USA website. There you can download the USA Student Guide, and there are videos of some current and former students in video profile format that you can see. Okay, so I shall now hand over to Professor Tate and Dr. McCorkindale. So I'm going to stop showing my screen.
Okay, I'll need to share my screen. Hi everybody. I'm Bertrand Tate. In fact, I'm French. I was myself a PhD student who came to Manchester in the, in the dawn of time in the 1980s, before it was really fashionable, I'd like to say. And I've stayed more or less all the time. So the funny accent is French, you'll have to forgive me. And I'm going to talk to you about two things, a little bit about my institute, or our institute. And my colleague Amanda McCockindale is with me, and she's American, and she came to do a master and then a PhD with us. So she's a classic example. And Anna afterwards also is a student with us. So we have a strong representation. So let me go through my slides, and then hopefully we'll have a conversation and you can ask as many questions as you want. In the process, I'm going to talk a little bit about my research, just to give you a taste of a course, which in fact Anna hasn't taken, but you've taken another course, I guess, in the history of humanitarianism. Okay, so I'll go ahead now, if I can, with my slides. Why isn't it? Yeah, okay. So HCRI was founded in 2008, and as you can see from the pictures, we were created just after the Sichuan earthquake. And my colleagues were coming back from the earthquake, and we sat down with a range of academics from the humanities and decided that we had to work on trying to understand better the humanitarian, international humanitarian aid process, and try to get to the roots of it and develop better tools for humanitarian aid and disaster relief. From there, we've moved on. We've actually engaged a range of disciplines, and we are unique, I think, worldwide, in bringing together medicine, especially emergency medicine, some of the social sciences, and the broad spectrum of the humanities. I am myself a historian of medicine by training, a cultural historian of medicine. And we are at the university, if you want, crossing two faculties, the Faculty of Humanities and the Faculty of Biology, Medicine, and Health. So I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about my research, just to show you how we try to do this a little bit. Now, this is a piece of work I started a few years ago, and it is really based on work I did in Cambodia. I'm still ongoing in Cambodia today. And it is about understanding how Cambodian camps, or the refugee camps that were once at the border of Cambodia, became a really central place for modern humanitarians. So I'll start by an anecdote. In about 4 years, 3-4 years ago, I was invited to join a very strange gathering. Strange in the sense that these were people, a lot of them from the States, like, for example, the chap on the right here, Chanda Toch, who's a Cambodian refugee who settled in Maine. And these guys were gathering for a reunion of veterans of the humanitarian system, people who worked in the refugee camps, but also refugees who were in the camps. I thought that was very strange, because you don't see that, in Afghanistan, you don't see that in Sudan, you don't see it in Somalia. People gathering 20 years hence and saying, let's try to recall what we did in this place. So I went there and I listened to them, and I listened to their stories. And we had some very interesting and difficult moments, because, for example, the chap who's on the left here was in charge of a police force which was extremely savage towards the refugees. And the sister, indeed, of the man I've introduced to you a minute ago, Chanda Toch, was killed by the soldiers of this man. And this man was there on the platform giving us a speech, explaining why, receiving American and Japanese money and French money, the Thai government was actually, in fact, in cahoots with the Chinese government in order to maintain the presence of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and try to fight the Vietnamese invasion of 1979. We also had very interesting gatherings where we were sitting down for the family pictures, or we went to the schools and had, we were treated in a very interesting way. But in that particular experience, I also met people who are absolutely essential to understand what modern humanitarianism is. The lady on the left, for example, designed the nutrition standards for the whole humanitarian system. And when I asked her where she learned her trade, where she learned her skills, she told me in the refugee camps of Cambodia. The chap on the right, on the other hand, went as an engineer to try to solve the problem of traffic in Bangkok. He failed. But he actually then settled and worked in refugee camps on the Karen side of Thailand. So, what is now Myanmar, and working with all those refugees living in camps for 30 odd years. His name is Jack Dunford. And when I met these people, I realized that in fact, humanitarianism is really a community of knowledge, and knowledge is produced in experiences such as the refugee camps on the border of Thailand and Cambodia. So just to refresh your memory, this is Cambodia. At the end of the 1970s, between 1975 and 1979, there was a horrific genocide committed by Pol Pot and the Communist Party of Cambodia, supported by the Chinese government at the time. In 1979, the Vietnamese invaded, and the people of Cambodia fled the invasion and settled in a multitude of politically controlled camps, which were for a long time, until 1992, the best resource refugee camps in the world, and received a lot of attention from the media and from the United States, the French government, and a range of other nations. Over that period, people started to consider an interesting problem, which was new in science at the time, which was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. For the first time, you could observe a population of people who had been subject to a genocide in a camp. Now, there had been victims of genocide before, of course, during the Second World War, or even, you could argue, in the First World War, but never had scientists actually had the possibility of observing what the long-term consequences of genocide were on the young, for example, adolescents or teenagers, and trying to identify just how a population would cope. Now, of course, the trauma of being in a camps that lasted for 20 years nearly, was considerable. At the same time, humanitarians developed new skills. A lot of Cambodians lost limbs on the mines that were just around the camps, so they could actually work on rehabilitation. And for example, an international NGO called Handicap International was founded in the refugee camps of Cambodia. It's also in those camps that they realized that there was some traditional Chinese medicine that worked, especially in relation to malaria. And some scientific research was conducted by Oxford University and Mahidol on malarial treatment. Fundamentally, there was a bigger problem, which was that the 800,000 or so Cambodians who were in the camps at the border of Thailand might have been perpetrators or sometimes victims and perpetrators of the genocide that had taken place before. Those camps were huge. The largest city in Cambodia at one stage was this particular one, Site 2. It was actually more populated than Phnom Penh at that time, 180,000, 200,000, difficult to know because the numbers were very fluctuant. But you will notice something is that they were made entirely of bamboo and straw because the Thai authorities didn't want a new city emerging on their borders. But people lived in extremely difficult circumstances, such as these images of Khao Dang and Site 2. Nevertheless, while they were in the camps, we also found that international organizations developed training, developed education, physical education, developed also revived things that had been banned under Pol Pot, for example, traditional Khmer culture. English became the lingua franca. So there is a whole process, if you see what I mean, of how refugee camps became a laboratory for reconstruction of a nation, a rebuilding of Cambodia. But more importantly at the time, of course, was that refugees were not a dirty word. It's quite difficult to explain today just how welcomed the refugees of communism were around the world. And in the United States took from Cambodia about 350,000 people, but France took over 70,000. In fact, by the end of the 1980s, they had taken nearly 90,000 refugees. Figures that are absolutely unimaginable today if you compare to the response of the United States, France, Canada, Australia to, for example, the Syrian crisis or other crises of that ilk. So we have changed. We were more welcoming to a certain type of refugee, more welcoming to a certain type of crisis. Furthermore, in my research, I'm interested in how, if you want, Westerners encountered the East. And of course, the people knew very little about Cambodia when they went there. Many of them that I interviewed didn't actually know that Cambodia was in any way connected to the Vietnam War. They had no connection of that kind. And the doctors who went to Cambodia didn't know Cambodian culture. And soon they discovered that they didn't understand what was going on. The symptoms, the illnesses that people were presenting were alien to the Westerners. And one of very few people who actually clicked and thought we have to do something different was this man, a Swiss called Jean-Pierre Yegel, who set up the, if you want, the lunatic asylum, I mean, for want of a better word, in the camp of Khao Dang. And in that camp, he set up a hospital where he brought together traditional medicine, Khmer medicine, and Western medicine. And it worked apparently miraculously for a lot of people. It certainly helped them fight a lot of their symptoms and especially possession and a variety of psychological disorders that were not classifiable in the Western classification. Humanitarians who were working in the camps, of course, realized a problem. And the problem was that the Vietnamese, of course, were an oppressive invader, but also they were themselves working with people who were Khmer Rouge or had been Khmer Rouge, people who had committed genocide. And at the time, the Khmer Rouge were in the United Nations representing Cambodia. So there was a very strange situation where humanitarians thought that they were being manipulated into supporting essentially monsters or people who had committed atrocities of an unspeakable kind. And gradually, humanitarians changed their politics to support Hun Sen, who is now, well, now the leader of Cambodia. So NGOs became a little bit hubristic. In 1992, they moved back into Cambodia, and they thought they could rebuild Cambodia as a liberal society. And arguably, issues or political issues emerged from this, and we have this problem. So to go back to my first slide, if you see, there is a very interesting moment where humanitarians on the one hand were very successful. They kept alive hundreds of thousands of people on the border of Thailand. They actually brought them back into Cambodia to a very large number or helped them move abroad. And they delivered a lot of basic and essential services, education and nutrition. And that memory, that success story is obviously inhabiting enough of these people, 800 all in all, to come back every year or every 2 years for a reunion. There was one only this winter. So what does the past teach us? Because why am I telling you this story? Because I'm a historian of humanitarian aid, but I'm also working for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. I'm also interested very much in contemporary humanitarian aid. I work with Minds Advisory Group. I work with Save the Children. So I'm interested in the present as well as the past. Nevertheless, I think we need to understand why we are working today in the way we are working, how our attitude to refugees has changed, how the science, even the science that we use to treat people, to help people, is itself a product of the intervention that we've committed in the past. So humanitarians have professionalized through their encounter with the world of aid which they have shaped. And that world of aid was always highly political, highly complex, and highly ambiguous. And I want the students to understand that, and I want my students to engage with it. And the role of history, if you want, is to help us understand the present. That's a very trite thing to say, but it's really to try to engage fundamentally with how we understand what is humanitarianism. So this is where our institute comes in. Our institute is basically bringing together a wide range of disciplines, from disaster management, from health and medicine, from peace and conflict studies, and from humanitarianism and conflict response together. That's a bit of our unique selling point. We are also a collaborating center of the World Health Organization, WHO, not very popular with your president at the moment, but nevertheless a very valuable institution. I hope you agree, which asked us to work on what they call a triple nexus. And triple nexus is the relationship between humanitarian aid, development, peace and conflict. And because we are so interdisciplinary, we can do this work. In fact, we are doing this work. We bring together a range of collaborators and projects, and for example, a major project on attacks on healthcare, which brings together historians like me, but also statisticians and doctors, people working on the data that is produced. We have three sort of research axes or groups of research, if you want. We're interested in health and well-being and social justice. We're interested in knowledge production in intervention. So the little talk I've just given you fits in that particular bubble. And we're interested in peace, conflict and crisis. And I guess my talk also fits in this one, although arguably my talk also fits in the first one, because we're trying to connect those things and we're trying to make them work for each other. Amanda, should I pass on to you at this stage? Or how we...
Yeah, so thank you very much, Bertrand. He's given an excellent presentation that would fit in nicely with our History of Humanitarianism course. As Bertrand mentioned at the start, I am American. My accent has changed a bit, but I'm originally from New York. But I did the MA in HCRI over 10 years ago now. I was one of the first cohorts to go through, and I've done my PhD within HCRI as well. And I've stayed here ever since. So as Bertrand mentioned in the previous slides, we do come at this from a very interdisciplinary approach. And you can see that in the current slide that Bertrand's brought up within our HCRI programs. So we do offer undergraduate programs in the international disaster management and humanitarian response, but at the postgraduate level, we have the MA in humanitarianism and conflict response, which is what I did 10 years ago and what Anna did this past year as well. But we also offer the MSc in International Disaster Management. So if you're more interested in geography and mapping disasters and looking at kind of coping with disasters, that might be the stream for you. We also offer a lot of online programs. So as Bertrand said, we work very closely with a number of international organizations, including Médecins Sans Frontières. And so one of our programs is a blended program with the MSc in Humanitarian Practice and LEAP. So we have practitioners coming in, taking classes on campus and also taking online classes with us, and we're supporting them in the field. We also get that through the MSc in Global Health. We have a lot of our students based around the world working for MSF or working in their own jobs and capacities while completing this online. And I had the pleasure of teaching on that class, on those courses as well. Most recently, one course was in ethics, human rights and health, and we had practitioners who are doctors in the field working around the world trying to deal with issues of, do you quarantine your patients, do you not, what are the human rights ramifications of doing that? And so we were able to kind of inform and provide an area for debate and discussion informed with academic rigor at a time when it was happening. So it was something that was very unique that we got to experience this year, and that will be taken forward in our future years of learning experiences. And then excitingly, we have this MSc in International Disaster Management and Humanitarian Response launching this September. So it's a fully online course that's based very much on our taught module, but now we're able to offer it online as well. So we were offering something similar in partnership with Hong Kong Polytechnic University. But you may know that there are a lot of issues going on within Hong Kong at the moment, and it's been a challenging year. So we're taking that over entirely and offering it up to others as well. So like I said, this kind of represents a lot of what we currently offer. Here is a taste of some of those taught modules. You can see we do have history of humanitarian aid, our disaster governance, introduction to critical GIS. We've got everything on it. But you can find out a lot more on our website, hcri.ac.uk. These change as well in line with our lecturers and what their interests are, what their research is in, so that you have the cutting edge advantage of learning from the people who are researching or working within the field. So we try to provide a nice mix of both, but there's some that are your core modules that you can't get away from. So for example, within HCR inquiries, that was one that I was able to teach Anna on this past year, and I hope she enjoyed it. But it's one of our steadfast ones where we're talking about the theories and the underlying disciplines and principles within HCRI. I think we should, I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but if anyone has any questions or anything that we can kind of go from there, because I think the next few slides, we take a look at some of our different discipline strengths. We come from a number of different backgrounds, which Bertrand covered. The next slide, which might be of interest, is where our students are currently from. So we are very much a global institute. We have international students on our top programs and then also on our online and blended programs. So we are having perspectives from around the world informing our teaching and our practice every day. And it's something that we're incredibly proud of and fortunate to have, I think, making it quite a nice community. And like I said, this is for our current taught students and online students. But if you look at the alumni after they've graduated over the past 10 years, our alumni go into jobs around the world. And some of the cohorts I know, they've gone on to head up missions in places like Vanuatu and Madagascar, South Sudan, etc. So it really grows it exponentially. What were you saying, Bertrand?
I was saying Haiti and Mexico. It's extraordinary, the diversity of places.
Yeah, and it really does show. So if we included everyone, it would be quite a full map. This is just a little snapshot of 3 of our students. So at the top we have Gloria, who's the Global Health alumni. She is a registered nurse as well as a midwife. She's from Hong Kong and she volunteered in the 2015 Nepal earthquake working with the International Federation of the Red Cross. Then we have Sharika, who's one of our current students this year as well, who's on the course with Anna. Sharika, again, I had the pleasure of teaching her, and she came from St. Lucia and she volunteered with a number of different organizations, and she also won a prestigious scholarship and was attending the program through that. But she works for the Children's Society, and she's also been instrumental in helping out and doing some reaching out programs that we had from HCRI, working with local youth groups and things within Greater Manchester and throughout the UK as one of our student ambassadors. And then our final student profile here is Ali, who is on the LEAP program. So he's in the humanitarian practice. Yeah, did you? Well, of course, you did the blended module for LEAP, didn't you? Part of his background, so he's originally from Syria, and he was studying general surgery at the time, and it was disrupted obviously due to the war. And he's now working for MSF, and he's been in a number of different missions around the world, including North Iraq, Kazakhstan, South Sudan, etc. So we kind of have a lot of people from different backgrounds all coming together and discussing these topics and giving their perspectives. So it makes it quite a diverse and interdisciplinary approach to learning about these topics.
I think one of the key things that comes up when you teach such a diverse group of students is that, for example, when I was teaching Ali's group, we were discussing statelessness and the complexities of statelessness. And Ali basically said, yep, that'd be me. I actually was stateless for much of my life because of the persecution of this particular group in Syria by the Ba'ath Party. So you get this very rich experience where people can actually bring a lot of their stories or their past experience as humanitarians, as well as people who are brand new, who are fresh from, but who bring, and this is quite interesting because people like Ali are really intimidated by when they meet our normal students, because they have all the skills that sometimes they need to pick up. So it's very interesting site of exchange, and I think that's what I think our institute is. I love it basically, and I think that's why it's worth coming to.
Yeah, well, I agree, because I've been here for the last 10 years now, so I keep getting hooked into the next steps. But
being institutionalized.
I have a bit. But as you can see from the background, it's not always rainy in Manchester. It is quite lovely and sunny as well. So for those Americans that might hear rumors about what it's like in Manchester, you can see proof behind me.
I think a final slide is a range of partners we work with. So we are completely plugged into the world of of humanitarian aid. We work with all the leading organizations, and we also work with leading universities, particularly the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, or Geneva or London. So I hope that gives you a taste of what we stand for and what we do, and we are very happy to take your questions.
Well, I've just seen a question come up on the side from Moira, saying, asking if she understands correctly that volunteer work overseas is part of the courses. So in the past, what some of our courses have offered, so we have one of the courses at the postgraduate level would involve a research-orientated field trip to an extent. So for that one, it was going to Uganda over January and conducting first-hand research based on building up your own research questions and conducting research. So throughout the year, that's one of the opportunities to kind of go abroad. Currently, with COVID, all of those situations are up in the air for next year. But it is something that beyond that, we would tend to be focusing on the research side, as opposed to having volunteer work overseas as part of the course itself. We do encourage you to volunteer within the local community and to support organizations and make connections with organizations. So we try to kind of help you do that through Careers Day and events and different things throughout the year, to connect you to those organizations, so that if you do decide to volunteer at a later date or apply for jobs with them or internships, then you have that easier pathway, shall we say.
Yeah, and we've had students from Fulbright, so there was no issues.
I don't see any additional questions at the moment. Perhaps Anna would like to introduce herself at this point.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. Yeah, so my name is Anna Spethman. I'm a current master's student of humanitarianism and conflict response. I am currently back in my parents' basement, but that's okay. I'm able to work on my dissertation, even from here, so that's great. Yeah, so originally, a little bit about my background. I actually got my undergraduate degree here in the USA in global studies with a regional focus on African history, human rights, and policy. And it was such a niche undergraduate degree that it was kind of difficult for me to find a job at first with such a specific degree, at least in my state here in the USA. So I decided to start working with a local refugee resettlement agency here in America, and absolutely loved that job right after my undergraduate degree. I gained a lot of experience in immigration law, learning about, U.S. refugee resettlement policies. But the more I met with my refugee clients and the more I learned about their international perspectives and experiences, the more I wanted to find a way where I could help on a grander scale and participate more in programs and services that benefit refugees all around the world, not just here in my state of Nebraska. So I decided to go to the University of Manchester to pursue this master's program because I saw all of these multidisciplinary discussions and approaches to humanitarianism that caught my interest, and ultimately kind of surrounded this refugee question and these issues facing refugees today. And yeah, I've been completely ecstatic with that decision since. All throughout my time at the University of Manchester, I've been able to bring in my own personal experiences and research and topical interests into my assessments, into different classroom discussions, and I really feel that I have grown both personally and from an academic standpoint, and to help me achieve my goal to work, with an international humanitarian organization dealing with migration-related research and programming. So yeah, once I finish this dissertation, I will start that job search. And I know that I still have support moving forward from the HCRI faculty and staff, well beyond my program's end date. So I hope that answers any questions.
Well, I think a question we always have from our students, it's obvious why you chose Manchester for the program. How did you fund it? That's always, we have students who are applying for Fulbright and also applying through the Marshall program. And so that's obviously one funding avenue, but for those who don't get selected for those programs.
Yes. So I chose Manchester. Well, okay, let me backtrack. I am a bit of a nerd, so I created a whole spreadsheet of universities that I was interested in for a graduate program. And what really narrowed down my search was, the humanitarianism and conflict response program itself. Not many universities around the world offer anything like it, at least in the USA. So that helped to really narrow the search down. And when you type in humanitarian graduate programs, I think the University of Manchester pops up first on your search. So that was an easy way for me to find the uni. But on this spreadsheet that I created, I categorized each of the universities I was interested in according to, maximizing, the costs, what scholarships were available to international students, what was the ranking, that was important to me, and as well, what overseas fieldwork opportunities did they offer, and what was the different experiences of the faculty and staff, because I know that networking in this sector is so important. So I wanted to make sure that there was a wide array of disciplines that the different staff and faculty covered. And after I created this spreadsheet, the University of Manchester checked all of the boxes for what I was looking for, and I was able to decide that was the right choice for me. I mean, there were so many funding opportunities that I just couldn't pass it up as well.
Okay, great. So one of the other questions that often is frequently asked is we often have students who are participating in these meetings as well, is to let us know what's your experience with the UK postgraduate regime? Like what's different? What came to mind after your experience as an undergrad, in a US university?
Yes, so what struck me right away when I came to the UK and at the University of Manchester was it was more theoretical than I guess I had ever experienced back in the USA. There's such an emphasis on understanding the literary discourse that underpins all of these issues that we discuss, and I think that's really enhanced and enriched my learning experience, but it just took some adjusting to. And as well, in the USA, we have assessments every week for our undergraduate courses. And once I came to the UK, I was told you have 2 essays to write per module, and you can manage your time and decide how you want to, address those assessments, how you want to handle them on your own. So there was a great degree of independence and self-motivation that was involved with my experiences there in the UK. But of course, I always had, my professors to turn to if I had any questions, a great deal of support from the university all around. But I would say those 2 factors really struck me, were the number of assessments, the marking, the theoretical nature of the course. And, I also liked that the classrooms were very open to different opinions and discussions. That was something also new for me. People were allowed to disagree. People were allowed to question topics, and it really enhanced, the learning experience as a result.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anna. Professor Tate, you had, I'm waiting to see if Adam Costa is available. Have you received any communication from him?
Hi, Luann. I've just, I haven't seen him in the participant list. I did email him about 15 minutes ago, but I haven't had an answer back. So I think something must have come up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I believe he had another meeting prior to this. So, all right. I'm not any additional questions from our participants today?
Maybe Anna, I'll ask a question. I know that in the other sessions that we've had, people have been interested about housing. So perhaps you can talk about where you lived, what you decided to do, and Manchester as a city as well, because I think it's really helpful to sort of understand what it's like to live in a place.
Yes, yes. So I had the benefit of living in both private accommodation and university accommodation during my time there. I was able to access the Manchester Student Homes website and services that Daniel had noted earlier. And on Manchester Student Homes, they offer a wide range, of course, of university residencies that you can choose from, but as well private accommodation with internationally student-friendly approved landlords and whatnot. And I found that program very helpful for me as an international student for securing housing outside the university before I came. As a postgrad student, I thought, okay, I'd like to live off campus, have that full Manchester experience initially. So I went through, the Student Homes website, found a landlord who had worked with lots of postgraduate students in the past. And I was able to get a place right by campus. It was a good experience, but just for affordability and my involvement on campus, I wanted to move closer to campus, even more so than I already was. So then after that, in about January, when I returned from Uganda, I was able to work with the University of Manchester's accommodation office and secure housing right on campus. There's plenty of options for international students. They can stay on city campus in the Victoria Park area or Fallowfield. And what's also great is they offer options just for postgraduates to live with other postgraduates, just women to live with women, men to live with men. So I think there's a plethora of options available to students in that regard. Manchester as a city was extremely fun to be a student in. There were so many opportunities to get involved in the community. I got to volunteer with a local charity. I was interning with an international organization. There's plenty of opportunities to get involved in that realm. There was public transportation available to anyone. I found that very navigable and easy to use, and that's coming from a state where we have no buses. I had never ridden a bus until I came to Manchester, and I found that very easy to use. My parents are proud of me there. But yeah, as a city, it's very diverse. There is a mile-long stretch of restaurants and stores that students refer to as the Curry Mile. That's right down from campus, and so you can try all new foods and really kind of immerse yourself in the international environment at all times in the city.
That's great. I see there's one additional question here. For Moira. I appreciate Daniel's comments on the diversity of the Manchester experience. Perhaps Anna might have additional thoughts, which I think you pretty much addressed right then. But I'll also be interested to know about disability access and inclusion at the university.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. So Manchester, the university and the city indeed has very, very good disability access in all the buildings, as far as I'm aware. And then in terms of inclusion, we have a very, very good student support service. So, for example, if students might have dyslexia or something like that, students will work with an advisor to secure extra time in examinations, those kinds of things. I don't know if Professor Tate or Dr. McCorkindale has experience of working with students who have special educational needs in class, perhaps?
Well, yes, no, there is a range of services, and there's a range of practical things we can do. It depends what you mean by inclusion. I mean, I think the university is as inclusive as it can possibly be. It's an extremely friendly and welcoming environment to any form of issues. Actually, it's very much as a university, since its foundation, Manchester University was created by people who couldn't make it to Oxford or Cambridge because of their religion, and it left that tradition of non-conformity. Essentially, Jews, Quakers, Catholics, people without any faith. That tradition of inclusiveness and non-conformity is really part of the DNA of the institution, and that includes that is really part and parcel of the whole experience.
Yeah, and I think just going on from that for the disability access, there are a few websites that I know that for the University of Manchester, you can kind of check the accessibility for each of the rooms and actually see what the room layout looks like for a lecture building, and kind of take a virtual tour of those rooms before attending. All of the rooms that I've taught in have been accessible for everyone to attend, and if it's not, then it would be one of those, we would move the lecture so that way it is inclusive and accessible for everyone. But like I said, every room I've ever been in, and as Daniel mentioned, across the university, that's something that we really aim for. And speaking of from Student Support Services, we get the information about our students and what their additional needs might be at the start of the semester. We also make sure to have a chat with individual students, making sure that their needs are met throughout the semester. So are the services in place going far enough? Are they able to keep up with what's going on? And in fact, a few times this year while I was teaching my first year module, students identified that they did have additional learning needs without having noticed this prior within secondary school or earlier than that, because they couldn't necessarily keep up with the learning and with the reading materials and things. So they actually were diagnosed with dyslexia having started university, and then gained support from that. So they were able to get access to laptops and to additional technology to kind of help their learning experience. So we do really want students to come forward if at any point they find themselves struggling, because we're here to help you and we have a great support system to do that.
Fantastic. So an additional question, you mentioned alumni working for MSF and other organizations. How frequently are US nationals able to find employment in the UK or with other non-US based organizations after they complete an MA?
Well, okay, I mean, on the issue of visas, I'm not completely up to date, so maybe you could get some information from Daniel here. But I'm in terms of employment in the humanitarian sector, it's totally international. I mean, it's international in the sense that if you work for MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières got 5 operational centers. It's present in 28 nations, and people, our students, for example, I've taught people were from Kenya and were working in Tashkent. Conversely, people from Myanmar working in Senegal, and similarly, you find Americans throughout the system going through different levels. Our MA students find jobs in the humanitarian system. Every time I go to the headquarters of Save the Children or IFRC, I bump into our graduates. So they do find jobs because I meet them all the time. And that's one of the good things. I mean, I think Anna put a finger on it. You know, there are in the world comparable institutes, or institutes with whom we like to work and engage. There's only a handful that are actually working in our area, and hardly any of them are on the scale of HCRI. I mean, HCRI is the biggest in Europe and probably the biggest institute of its kind in one of 2 or 3 in the world. I mean, we work a lot with the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, and we work a lot with people in Fordham and in Tufts as well, but we are actually bigger than most of our friends.
I can jump in on the visa thing. Actually, there's some exciting news from the British government about visas, and that is that they are there will be a new student work visa, post-study work visa, that will start at the end of this new academic year. So that will help students who want to stay in the UK and work. They'll be entitled to this visa. All the details are not published yet, but they are beginning to publish them. And when I have them as an immigration advisor, I will share them with the listserv so that you can see that. But I think it's a really exciting opportunity for students who do want to stay on and work in the UK, because they will be able to in a much easier way this year.
Thank you for helping on this. I knew there was something changing at the moment, so I didn't want to say anything at all.
No, that's really exciting to hear, because when I finished the MA, it was on a similar student work visa. Following that, I was able to come back and carry on working afterwards. So it's really exciting that they're going to be relaunching that and allow that exchange.
Yeah, and just to add on from the question about disability access, any potential students who have any issues at all, they can reach out to the Disability Support Office. All the information is available online, or indeed people are very free to direct questions to me and I can connect you with the right office. So students who have any issues at all can complete an assessment, and then they will automatically work with an advisor, as I say, and that is how the academic staff are alerted to any issues that students might have, and then any adaptations that are required, anything like that, that will all be taken forward. But the student does need to reach out before the semester begins.
All right, thank you very much. So I think I see no additional questions. Any final statements anyone wants to make? This is fantastic introduction to the HCRI, and I know I have several students intensely interested in Manchester for that reason. So very good for me.
If you want to speak to somebody who knows a lot about HCRI, I think it's very clear. I mean, I think please email Amanda because she knows everything there is to know. She knows it from the, contrary to me, I've only taught there, but she actually studied there, you know, so she knows it from both sides of the of that equation. So I think she's undoubtedly the lead specialist.
Yeah, so please do get in touch. I'm happy to kind of have a Skype call or a chat. Also through HCRI, we're going to be conducting some webinars over the summer. If you're interested in just learning a bit more, we're hearing from some of our different lecturers, things, please get in touch. But like I said, like I can tell you where the 40 people I graduated with 10 years ago, where they are now, and the different organizations they're working for. And a lot of them, there were a couple other Americans with me at that point who are still living in the UK now, and it's kind of great to see how the story evolves 5 years, 10 years down the line of where our students end up. But as an American, it takes a bit of the seasons take a bit of adjusting to, but beyond that,
there's only one season and it's raining.
Exactly. Never pack away your anorak or your raincoat. But it is, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions and let you know what it's really like. So please do feel free to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Perfect.
Well,
Mary.
Yes, I was going to say thank you very much, everybody. That has been a fantastic overview. University of Manchester has so many amazing courses. We have a Marshall Scholar going to Manchester this year, one of our second years, and I know he's really excited about it. We've had Marshall, in fact, I think, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, there are films of Marshall Scholars on your US page. So
There certainly are. There are definitely 2, possibly 3. I can't remember. We tried. If you remember, Mary, I told you we tried to get all of them to be filmed, but you were aware that one of them would have been so involved in his physics research that he would have just been too busy to be filmed. But at least 3 of them are on the website for sure.
So please check that out, and I think we have links to some of those on our website as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you again for coming. Don't forget, there's another one next week. I believe it's the University of Liverpool next week. So close by to Manchester. We're travelling towards the coast and that beach that was mentioned.
It's the old rivalry.
Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you, everybody who spoke today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.